So hello everyone. So my problem is I got the piecewise equations and I'm supposed to make the graph for each of these equations. So let's begin with the first one. -4 if x is less than -2. So there's two things that we can notice here. First thing is that there's going to be a straight line at -4, nothing else. But there's another thing that also tells us that x is less than -2. So what that means is anything that's less than -2 we can use. So -3, -4, -5, -6, -7, and so on. And here, the table for the first one is I started from -2 and went down from -10. And the y is all -4 because that's going to have a straight line. And as you can see, -2 is less than -2, -3 is less than -2, and so on. And this is what the line looks like. I have an arrow going towards the left and an open circle at x is less than -2. Less than -2 means an open circle. If there was a less than equal to, then it would be a closed circle. And what that also means is in an open circle, for our next graph, we can use that same point. Now, which brings us to our next graph, x minus 1 in absolute value. So what that tells us is that absolute value looks like a V. So our graph for this one is going to look like a V. If -2 is less than equal to x is less than 3. So what that tells us is anything in between -2 and 3 we can use. So here as it displays in this table, x, I went from -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, 3, because anything in between is only what I can use. And here, x minus 1, I plugged in my x values into x. For example, -2 minus 1 gets you 3. And here's what it looks like. It looks like a V. But what we also can see is that since the first graph, since it had an open circle at -2, we could use that same point for our next graph. And if -2 is less than equal to x, so what that means is less than equal to, that means we're going to have a closed circle. And x is less than 3. So less than 3 does not have equal to, so that means it's going to be an open circle. That means for our next graph, we can use that point also, which brings us to our last graph. -2x plus 10 if x is greater than equal to 3. So what that tells us is anything greater than 3 we can use. So 4, 5, 6, 7, and so on. And here is the table. So I went from 3 to 10. Here my equation was -2x plus 10. So I plugged in my x values into x. So an example is -2 times 3 gets you -6 plus 10 gets you 4. Here are my x and y values. I plug it in. Here it is, the blue graph. And what we notice is x is greater than equal to 3. So at 3 is going to have a closed circle. And there's an arrow at the bottom. And this is how you find graphs while giving the equations. Thank you.